My name is Alex Jiménez, and I'm a professor of conducting and director of orchestras at the College of Music. And the program that's coming up November 9th is members of the University Symphony Orchestra. Whereas in the big orchestra, you're going to have string sections of, I think our string section this year is 15 first violins and I believe 16 second violins and so forth, quite large. And these are, we're going to perform with the USO works for a large orchestra. The chamber orchestra has a smaller string section and a smaller wind section. And so there's repertoire specifically for that. Most of the repertoire prior to the 19th century, and really into the very first few years of the 19th century, are works for orchestras that we would consider now chamber orchestras, because that was the size of orchestras. I enjoyed it a lot because whereas as a conductor with a large orchestra, there's a lot of traffic directing that has to be done because the thing is so huge, and sometimes the music's so very complex. With the chamber orchestra, I get to be part of that chamber music making a little bit more, stepping back a little bit, offering guidance, but letting them really play a lot more together. The program for that concert includes the Prelude to the Afternoon of a Faun by Debussy. And then we're doing something very, very special, Elliott Carter's Flute Concerto with Eva Amsler on our faculty. And then we'll be finishing the program with Beethoven Symphony No. 4. So starting with Debussy, he was a French composer, was really the father of musical impressionism. And this work, which was written in the very late 19th century, really set the tone. It really established that sense of musical impressionism. It's based on poetry. And it's just so full of color, that's really so full of color and in a way it's a soundscape that allows you to sort of float in a way through this music. And so they'll look forward to the way the instruments sort of dovetail with each other and create all kinds. It would be like an artist holding a palette of color. And suddenly there's, you've got your blues, you've got your greens, you have your yellows, but you're mixing a lot of these colors together to form new, beautiful colors. And that's sort of how they should make that transfer. That's what they're seeing. They're seeing basically a composer take a palette of sound and combine those things together into beautiful new colors. The flute solo is famous at the beginning of the Debussy, so they'll want to sort of pay attention. It starts with a flute solo that makes it very unique in and of its own for that time. And it really is the center point. It really is the focal point for the entire piece, which is not terribly long, by the way, approximately 10 minutes. The Elliott Carter piece, Elliott Carter was one of the most important of the American composers over the past, 100 years, or well, 75 years. He passed away in 2012. He was 100 years old when he wrote this concerto in 2008. Yeah, Elliott Carter lived a very long and very productive life. It is a contemporary piece, but I don't want that to scare anybody because very much like the Debussy, but in a different language, it's very much about color. It's very rhapsodic in its own way. The communication between this very small ensemble and the solo flutist, really spectacular stuff. Terrific use of percussion. It's a very small group, but you playing a lot of instruments. So again, color is sort of the order of the day here in the first half. So it's a really beautiful piece, very exciting. And then the Beethoven, of course, is a staple of our repertoire. Beethoven was, one of the greatest symphonists to ever walk the face of the earth. His 9 symphonies really form a canon of orchestral music that is really our foundation, if you will, for everything that happened afterwards. And the 4th Symphony, again, a smaller chamber work, but unlike the 1st and the 2nd symphonies, which are kind of jovial, this has a little bit more depth. Especially with this introduction that sort of has a sort of dark feel to it, but there's a lot of juxtaposition of this sort of dark and light. And then the last movement is just an incredible tour de force for the orchestra. I mean, it is a real jaunt through some incredibly powerful and fun music. So it should be a really fun concert.